Now, our feature presentation.
This is Mike Wallace. You're listening to Harrison.
Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison. With Harrison reporters stationed in every country, every capital.
News update.
Your Harrison headlines brought to you by INN World Report.
It's the top of the hour on Go Harrison, and I'm Mercy Malik with your reality check. The White House acknowledged Friday that the Pentagon's top lawyer and the Attorney General believe that the U.S.'s military actions against Libya amount to, quote, hostilities, contradicting Barack Obama's reading of the War Powers Act. The New York Times said Saturday that Obama, his chief lawyer Robert Bauer, and State Department legal advisor Harold Koh believe hostilities did not apply because no one is firing at U.S. troops and the U.S. is simply complying with the UN resolution. Critics say the administration's position would allow it to drop bunker-busting bombs or launch a nuclear weapon against a regime in a preemptive strike while not technically having declared war. Congress has become increasingly uneasy as the costs of the engagement have risen and as the Gaddafi regime shows few signs of collapsing. That squares with U.S. intelligence assessments, which predicted that Libya's existing leaders would successfully resist a NATO air campaign. It's 1 minute past the hour. Over 1,000 people in at least 10 boats plan to set sail from Athens, Greece tomorrow to deliver humanitarian aid and building materials to Gaza. The second International Freedom Flotilla includes activists from Canada, Ireland, Spain, Switzerland, and the U.S. The Americans have named their boat The Audacity of Hope, after Barack Obama's book of the same name. The first Freedom Flotilla last year was met with deadly force from the Israeli Navy. 8 Turks and 1 Turkish American were killed as commandos raided the Mavi Marmara in international waters 60 miles from Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned that Israel will again use force if the flotilla tries to break the blockade. And yesterday, Israel's Navy chief called for international powers to halt the progress of the 10-ship Freedom Flotilla whilst en route to Gaza. Israel's Vice Admiral Eliezer Moram said the flotilla is, quote, a flagrant attempt to delegitimize Israel, end quote, and that the humanitarian mission is, quote, driven by hate, end quote. Moram also claimed that, quote, a humanitarian crisis in Gaza is non-existent. Okay, it's 2 minutes past the hour. Finally, U.S. officials have pledged to improve the aid program to Afghanistan begun by the Bush administration, but analysts say more money has undermined the counterinsurgency effort against the Taliban. Recent U.S. government reports suggest the Obama administration has spent large sums on projects that have fueled corruption, distorted local economies, and left Afghanistan with technology it won't be able to maintain after NATO forces leave. The Congressional Commission on Wartime Contracting in Iraq and Afghanistan said in a report released earlier this month that billions more in aid money may be wasted due to, quote, overly ambitious proposals, incomplete analysis, poor planning, weak coordination, and inadequate follow-through by federal officials, end quote.
But other than that?
Right, that about covers it, I think. A study conducted last week by the Democratic majority of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee concluded that the Afghan economy is so dependent upon military spending and international aid that it could plunge into a depression upon U.S. forces' scheduled departure in 2014. For Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7, this has been Mercy Malik with your reality check.
For details on all these stories and more, go to INNWorldReport.net.
GoHarrison.com.
What's new about Tiger Woods?
Michael Jackson,
Elvis Presley,
O.J. Simpson, abandoned baby, order now.
Harrison. Talk show. Political. Outrageous. Philosophical. Analytical. Passionate. Sunsets. Roadkill cooking tips. Open-minded. Swordsman. Bent. Resolute. Chocolate. Bushwhacker. Belt buckles. Investigative. Companion. Fearless. Call in. Piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison.
It is 4 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. Welcome and happy Monday. Live from our remote West Hollywood studios. Glad to be part of your life and thrilled that you're part of ours. Boy, so much going on Earth today. It is Well, it's not so different from 9 months ago, 8, 2 years, 10 years ago. The good news is we are really starting to get the idea how resolvable it is. By the way, we are streaming live video as well. Go to goharrison.com, one word, goharrison.com, and you can watch this, plus see the video of the broadcast, the transmission. Coming up shortly, we're going to be hearing from Bank of America and Discover Card, whom I talked to, with their permission, to their customer service representatives, offering tips on how you can pay off your credit card since you probably don't have a job. One of their first and most important gifts to you is for you to go sell your blood.
Yes.
Your blood plasma at $10 a bag. And the other two is to steal from your church.
Wow.
Now, when I say steal, they didn't use the word steal. They just said go to the pastor, tell him you're starving, have them give you food money and send us the food money. As far as I know, it's either money laundering or theft, or as our friend Donald Rumsfeld would say.
There are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we now know we don't know.
Except they know. And
Right.
they have a plan for you. Also, by popular demand, we weren't able to bring on Jesse Ventura last week. He will be on today. We're going to be playing that entire interview. That's coming up at about 25 past the hour. Coming up in about 20 minutes, the full Jesse Ventura interview where he talks about the nature of conspiracies. Not just breaks down the nature of his book, which you can read on your own, but why? Why does the government perpetuate naughty monkey shines and create endless mayhem on their behalf, with you as the unfortunate dented punching bag having much less fun than you did 10 minutes earlier. So he's going to explain the nature of that, having been at the highest levels in government. Mercy Malik in with me today, Geoff Thomas, and I want to start with our little friends in the banking business. Now, as you know, Congress bailed them out by the course of $30 billion or such. Really not enough. Really not enough to make them very happy. If you're like me, a total deviant pervert at 3 a.m. watching C-SPAN, other people at
That
least...
is deviant.
Really,
Yeah.
other people have the good taste at least to flip through porn or watch Not me,
That's
babe.
mainstream.
It
Porn
is.
is mainstream. C-SPAN is really
Thank you.
deviant, Harrison.
It's government porn. It's GP. That's me. And so I was sitting there hunkered over my TV at Saturday night at 3 a.m. when other people
Nice.
were engaged, rumbusticating au flagrante, affecting intromission, paliardizing, all lovely ways of saying... Exactly. Not me, baby. I'm watching C-SPAN. So, very important as we get to the banks, the credit card companies, the banks giving you the ultimate permission to sell your bodily fluids and hand them the cash or sell off everything you have, live on the street as long as they get their money. It's really okay. The credit unions, and credit unions are this wonderful invention that came about many decades ago, where communities can get together and lend each other money. And you and I, as part of the community, actually own the bank. Mm-hmm. I know, it's cuckoo.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's like you and I sharing the air we breathe, as if I don't actually own it, because I have more pollution credits than you.
What if you put up a fence? Will that keep your air on your side?
We tried that. I
Yeah.
put up an imaginary fence between Fukushima in Japan and here.
wanna
It
do
hasn't
that
helped.
too.
And if we get time, we're going to talk about some extraordinary new
boy.
radiation readings.
yeah, I've got some
But
stuff on that too.
We'll do that at the bottom of the hour, okay?
Right.
So this is the head of the credit union organization nationally on C-SPAN talking about how the banks won't let credit unions lend money. Now, as we know, when Congress bailed out through TARP,
yeah.
which is something
It
you
keeps
throw
the
over
rain off, yeah.
or you throw it over a garbage heap to keep the flies off it.
Right.
When they bailed out the banks, the idea, although it wasn't legislated into law, was please now take all this free money from the taxpayers and lend it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody's just handed you $30 billion and Mildred wants a loan, but she doesn't really have much of a job and it could take her 20 years to pay it back at a lower interest, why not just keep the cash and then lend it back to the government and make even more interest, which is what they've done.
Right.
So the credit unions are the ones lending to the small businesses. And small businesses, as you know, are responsible for 78% of all jobs in America. All new hires come from small businesses. So this is the credit union organization saying the big banks don't want us lending money. They're not going to lend money, but they're trying to stop us. Then you're going to hear the commercial banks saying how bad the credit unions are. This is C-SPAN. It's still warm, this audio. Enjoy.
Billion taxpayer dollars last year. Yet the credit union record of serving the underserved is well demonstrated. And when we have attempted to do more to serve the underserved, the bankers have brought lawsuits to stop us. As we recover from the Great Recession, small businesses are underserved. Yet the bankers say that small business credit is not in short supply. But many small business owners report being turned away by their banks. It is a primary reason that Congress gave the banks access to $30 billion taxpayer dollars last year. Yet the credit union record of serving the underserved is well demonstrated. And when we have attempted to do more to serve the underserved, the bankers have brought lawsuits to stop us. As we recover from the Great Recession, small businesses are underserved. Yet the bankers say that small business credit is not in short supply. But many small business owners report being turned away by their banks. It is a primary reason that Congress gave the banks access
as you can hear there, he's making the argument that the big banks are naughty. Now, here's the big banks standing up, and of course, the way that it works is you put the guy whose information you don't really want to have a huge amount of impact first. Which is why when you have double speakers or even in a rock situation, you have the warm-up band that does 10 minutes, and then you bring on Frank Sinatra. And then they say, well, who warmed up for him? Timmy somebody.
I was getting snacks.
Yeah, I was getting snacks.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sorry.
That's when I got my hot dog.
Darn it.
As it were. And so we get the same thing. The credit unions go first. They explain how the banks are robbing everybody. And then the banks go on to say lies, all of it, as you'll hear.
Distorts the market. On countless occasions, I've lost business lending opportunities with established customers to credit unions who underprice my competitive rates. We strongly oppose the Small Business Lending Enhancement Act, S509. Congress should not expand credit union business lending powers. Credit union business lending is an immediate threat to my bank. I'm happy to compete with other tax-paying lenders, even large banks, but the credit union tax exemption creates an unfair advantage and distorts the market. On countless occasions, I've lost business lending opportunities with established customers to credit unions who underprice my competitive rates. We strongly oppose the Small Business Lending Enhancement Act, S509.
I know. It's just horrible, isn't it?
Oh, it's threatening his bank.
It's threatening his bank, and how dare the community, the citizens of the United States who paid for his bailout, get together and help each other when they're desperate for money because he chooses not to or he chooses to at his pleasure. This is the plot of the play.
It's disgusting. Reminding
you, coming up in just a handful of minutes, the full interview with Jesse Ventura, talking about the nature of conspiracies, the nature of the collusion between the banksters, between all of these guys, how it works, and what the reasoning is here. 13 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you, your new best friend. You are listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California, and streaming live video where you can actually watch all of this stuff through goharrison.com. One word, GoHarrison.com, and you'll see it. We're streaming live on Ustream, and then by tomorrow it will be on YouTube and then fed into DirecTV to 25 million people who get to join you and your family, me and my family, at 13 minutes past the hour. Now, let's enjoy the icing on the cake.
Oh, boy.
This, let me tell you, I'm still horripilating with post-pleasure here.
Oh, boy.
This was such a treat. What I did is I purposely did not pay 2 credit cards for 90 days. They have a trigger system now. At 90 days, they call you. They call you every other minute. They call you at 3 in the morning. There's no underemployment.
You're like, whoa, I'm watching C-SPAN. Sorry, don't bother me.
There's no underemployment in the banking system when it comes to them wanting the money you owe on your credit card. I think I owed $8 on one. I mean, it was just a minor. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
so the computer. So they call and they harass. So, they want to record you. Do you mind if we record you? Absolutely. And I said, back at you, because I want to play this to my audience, and let's get tips on how you can help me pay this off. And so this is the Discover Card Corporation. Actually, let's start with the Bank of America Corporation. And in this, they give me some tricks that this is what they want you to do. It's, is beyond the pale the right word? I don't know. You figure it out.
Okay. a couple of questions. I was talking to Discover Card, and they had some ideas on ways to generate money to help this thing off. And one of them was, let me think. One of the ideas was to go sell blood plasma and use that money to pay the bank. Do you guys have any ideas like that too?
As far as donating plasma, I don't know how much they really give for that. I don't think it's much. But, I mean, that is, I don't know, there's only so much that you can donate, I think. I don't know. You know how much they give you for doing that?
I don't, because I've never done it. But what other stuff does Bank of America recommend to people? Like if they're, trying to invent ways to, pay you guys?
Well, I mean, all we do is we really suggest if there's any regular home things, like cable and stuff like that, kind of cut those things out. Just anything that, that we as people just do on a regular basis is try and save and trying to spend the least amount possible.
Right.
But, we just recommend our cardholders if they have any outside assets, any car payment that they may be paying on, just basically get rid of the car if you can. Like I said, internet or cable to get, some extra money in.
And just get rid of your car.
Just get rid of your car. Yeah.
Just get rid of your car.
No big deal.
Donate it while you're at it, and then get rid of your whole access to the outside world because we come first. Right?
My heart goes out to that girl because it really sounded like she was really struggling with making those words come out of her mouth.
She was not having a good time.
No.
She was not. We're going to hear from Discover Card in a minute where they do actually tell me to go sell my bodily fluids and send the check right away. Coming up in just a few minutes is News and Traffic with Mercy Malik and Jeff Thomas, plus the full unexpurgated interview with Governor Jesse Ventura, his new book called 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read. And Jesse's going to talk about the nature of conspiracies rather than just list them. You and I have spent, all of us, right, in our own derelict times at 4 a.m, filling ourselves with the non-nutritious news of the day. But he talks about why, because the why is infinitely more interesting than the what. Once we understand why people do it, then we'll be able to predict, as Noam Chomsky teaches us, all of us sitting in his classroom at MIT, right? Mm-hmm. Teaches us what then can happen next. Let's hear from Discover Card. This is their tricks. Remember, if you owe money on your credit card, I'm sure you're getting these calls. And if you'd love to send me an email, harrison@goharrison.com. You can find it through goharrison.com, where we're streaming right now, live audio and video as well. Please let me know the kinds of lovely gifts you're getting from the credit card companies in their way of having an entanglement with you, whereby you sell your blood and the rest of it for their benefit. Here's Discover Card offering some more little tricks to the trade.
Okay.
All right.
Much better.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Like those suggestions were made, and unfortunately, we don't have any way to
We were just setting up the mics there.
Certain suggestions. So those suggestions that people offered, not donating, but selling plasma. And I'm not sure if you're aware that you can sell your plasma.
You mean my blood?
Right. But you do get.
Well,
I don't know how often. I don't know who you would contact. Pretty much, probably the Red Cross or something along the lines of that.
Well, that would be a donation. This is, I guess, there are plasma centers where you go and you sell portions of your blood.
Right, and then and so that's something that some people have looked into just to increase their income, or selling things on eBay, garage sales, all sorts of different things. People are getting creative anymore on how to get extra money.
She said go to the church and ask them to feed you, I think it was.
And people are looking to food banks or even charitable organizations for extra income in that sense. Or not income, but, helping with making up for a loss of or a lack of income.
And then they take whatever money's left and send it to, I guess, Discover, right? You guys.
Sorry, sorry, I'm not understanding.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then whatever money they had left, let's say they, as you guys suggest, go to the food bank or the church and ask them to feed you, then whatever money might be left, you can send to the bank.
Absolutely. I mean, those are always options. But your options here with Discover Card are, at this point in time, we have reduced interest payment programs, but payments do need to be maintained.
But payments do need to be maintained.
Again,
Wow,
the girl probably is up to dead in her eyeballs herself, and it's just tragic to me that this is the job that she has to do in order to probably keep
and she
her
was
car.
patient and kind, delivering all this information. Haltingly knowing that she was going to be sharing it with a bunch of people, and, it was prickly. But I just love to know what's the real story, right?
Well, whoever wrote those guidelines and suggestions is sitting in their mansion jacuzzi and sipping champagne. I was going to name a fancy champagne, but I don't even know what that is. So they're sipping a very expensive fancy champagne and exhorting people to donate body parts for payment on their credit card.
This reminds me so creepily of the Weimar Republic, right? Back in the early 1930s, when the same thing, the German parliament got together and they said, we have an idea. Why don't we take the taxpayer money and actually give it back to the taxpayers? But they would work for it, which is what FDR did in his second term. And so the parliament got together to do that, and a handful of bankers in a system similar enough to ours got in there and said, no, give it to us, and then we'll just, Reaganomics. It'll just trickle back down. And then you remember the famous photographs of people walking around with wheelbarrows full of money to buy a loaf of bread. So the Disney magic continues this way. And I just want to, again, remind you that if you have little wonderful stories, our new website at goharrison.com is coming up. I know. How many months have I said that?
We're building up the anticipation.
Yeah.
It's deliberate.
We have a guy named Billy Foster who's working on it.
We got a guy.
It's going to frighten you. But we're going to list all of your wonderful credit card stories because this stuff needs to be public, right?
Yeah.
This stuff needs to be on MSNBC. It needs to be on CNN. Otherwise, this stuff happens in the background and there's no sense of outrage, much as Europeans show up by the hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands on the street, as we are now in Wisconsin and New York. Thank you, Jesus. And coming up, by the way, in October is going to be our first national rally in the United States of America where nobody is going to leave until the government changes. A permanent show up, a permanent sit-in.
Where are they sitting?
In Washington. We don't know yet. I think it's going to be on the Capitol Mall.
It's better that it'll be surprising.
It'll be a surprise.
They won't know where to anticipate.
I just found out about it yesterday at two progressive fundraisers.
Wow.
Because on my Sundays, rather than yachting or tanning, but it's gonna happen. So just know about it. 23 minutes past the hour. Harrison with you. You're listening to Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, news and traffic with Mercy Malik and Jeff Thomas, plus the full unexpurgated interview with Jesse Ventura, which you can watch. And of course, we are streaming audio and video live, as well as our FM broadcast on 90.7 FM. But you can watch this at goharrison.com. One word, goharrison.com. And you can catch the video stream. Podcast will be available in perpetuity. Absolutely. So let's set up here for Jesse Ventura here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play you just a 1-minute quickie. Okay? This is a little video I put together about a year ago when I was dancing somewhere and some guy came up to me. What do you mean you were dancing and a guy came up to you? All right.
Was it Oil Can Harry's?
It was.
Oh, it's my favorite.
And I guess now that we've put that together, that must mean that I'm TW. That's right. Anyway, this guy came up, and he was an accountant. He is an accountant, probably still at Bank of America. And his job, downtown LA, his job was to come up with the bonus packages for the Bank of America executives after the bailout, to come up with ways to get rid of the millions of dollars. Wow. So I put together a little 1-minute video that really kind of nets it out, just to seal up this conversation before we go to news, traffic, and Jesse Ventura. Enjoy.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see.
A couple of questions.
Reality check with Harrison.
Harrison with you. You know, as if AIG's bold behavior weren't upsetting enough to most Americans, Bank of America is now doing the same, except under the covers. I met with a Bank of America corporate accountant, and we'll call him Mr. Whistleblower Light for his anonymity. This man works at their downtown Los Angeles corporate headquarters and is charged with inventing ways to secretly funnel $100 million to managers and executives without the press finding out, so as to avoid another, icky, sticky AIG-type embarrassment. Turns out the Bank of America calls its creation packaging. And how packaging works is you hand $5 or $10 million to each management executive, and that manager spontaneously decides to retire, even if he's 25 years old. And that's happening too. This is now called his retirement package, and he's to leave with the loot and anonymously vanish into the mainstream somewhere. According to the Wall Street Journal, even the Obama administration has been crafting bailouts in ways to allow banks to avoid any of the new restrictions that Congress is looking to impose, like limits on the millions in executive pay or disclosure on who gets the money and where it actually goes. They're doing this by creating a middleman agency to hand off the money. In another era, this might be called money laundering. But not in this one. This administration calls it channeling funds through special entities. And since they're not giving federal aid directly to companies, congressional limits and regulations can be totally ignored. So just remember, when in doubt, take the money and retire on out.
Go Harrison. Completely unsponsored common sense commuter traffic.
It is 26 minutes past the hour. This is your Go Harrison live and local traffic report on KPFK. In Burbank on the 134 West past Buena Vista, only the left lane is open as crews attempt to clear crash. Traffic is slow from San Fernando Road. In East LA on the 5 South at Calzona and earlier crashes out of lanes. Traffic is slow from Los Feliz Boulevard. The 10 East is slow in Mid-City from Vermont Boulevard to the 5 Freeway from an earlier accident. Check us out on Ustream where we are streaming today, right now. The show is live all over the planet. Visit GoHarrison.com and click on the Ustream tab. You can watch as little baby Wiley licks bacon grease off my lips.
It's a dog he's talking about.
That's right.
Yeah, don't say that anywhere near my show that you've got babies licking you.
Oh, wow.
This is not Anthony Weiner Hour.
Oh. For Harrison, I'm Jeffrey Thomas on KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, and now some news with Mercy Malik.
Harrison. From Washington prowlers to corporate crawlers. News update. Your double grind of headlines.
Go Harrison News Time is 28 minutes past the hour, and I'm Mercy Malik with your reality check. A new study has calculated that California's maintenance of the death penalty as a prosecutorial option costs taxpayers $184 million each year. The Los Angeles Times reports that the study, conducted jointly by U.S. Ninth Circuit Judge Arthur L. Alarcon and Loyola Law School professor Paula M. Mitchell, found that Californians have spent over $4 billion on capital punishment since it was reinstated 33 years ago, and that figure will climb to over $9 billion by the year 2030 if the policy is retained. This is true. Current death row prisoners in California cost the state $184 million more per year than prisoners serving life sentences without the possibility of parole, and a death penalty trial alone is up to 20 times more expensive than a life without parole trial. Yep, I've been researching this all weekend. I'm looking at Harrison's jaw dropped. God. Additionally, you'll love this, roughly 70% of death row convicts' cases are found by federal judges to have been faulty in some way, thus necessitating even more costly court proceedings. The study's findings concur with others recently conducted by both the American Civil Liberties Union and the bipartisan California Commission on the Fair Administration of Justice. Numerous national studies indicate that the death penalty does not act as a deterrent to criminals, nor reduce the rates of homicides in states where it is implemented. Talk about buyer's remorse. It's 29 minutes past the hour, gentlemen. In the wake of the Fukushima nuclear disaster, the U.S. stands nearly alone amongst first world nations in its refusal to rethink nuclear power. Germany has already implemented a plan to phase out all of its nuclear reactors over the next decade, and in a national referendum last week, 95% of all Italians voted to block a nuclear power revival in their nation. A recent newspaper poll in Japan showed nearly 3/4 of the populace favor phasing out nuclear power entirely in their country. In the U.S., however, Barack Obama recently appointed Exelon Corporation CEO John Rowe to his Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future. INNWorldReport.net notes that nuclear operator Exelon is one of Barack Obama's biggest campaign donors, having contributed more than $269,000 to his political campaigns. Yup. Dr. Shoji Sawawa, professor emeritus at Nagoya University, says that in the 1950s, Japan's Scientist Council recommended that their government ban the use of nuclear power, but the government acquiesced to its development at the insistence of the U.S. government. Most nuclear plants in Japan were built by U.S. corporations. It's 31 minutes past the hour. And now, the inaugural installment of Examples of Why Fundamentalist Religion and the Justice System Do Not Mix. First up, Judaism. But rest assured that Islam and Christianity will each receive their day imminently. Now, on to the story. The BBC reports that a Jewish rabbinical court in Israel has leveled the penalty of death by stoning upon an interloper who entered their court and refused to leave. That interloper was a dog. Stranger still, the fundamentalist judges made their decision because they believed the dog to be the reincarnation of a long-deceased lawyer who had insulted the court 20 years ago. It seems that at the time of the initial incident, one of the judges attempted to place a curse on the attorney, which was intended to force his spirit into the body of a dog. Why are you laughing?
I'm sorry.
Which they subsequently presumed had finally returned to loiter about the bench, so to speak. The good news is that the dog reportedly escaped, but not before one of the judges had attempted to pressure local children into carrying out the stoning. Starting them young. Good times. Stop it. For Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 Los Angeles, 98.7 Santa Barbara, 93.7 San Diego, and 99.5 Ridgecrest, China Lake. I'm Mercy Malik. You can be my friend on Facebook and send me news tips for your reality check.
News update. Harrison.
Harris with you. You're listening to and watching Go Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, and 99.5 in Central California. Well, history has shown that it's virtually impossible to enforce accountability and honesty from inside of the government. And our next guest, former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura, he happens to be a strong advocate for any source that's acting as a check on governmental integrity, and that would include WikiLeaks, which he considers heroic. He feels WikiLeaks is exposing our government officials for the frauds that he says they actually are. In his book, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read, he's hoping to shed new light on what politicians are not telling you and why it actually matters to all of us. The upshot, well, Governor Ventura is challenging unnecessary secrecy, and he asserts that government leaders will actually show greater ethical consideration in the future if we remove their masks today. Some of the content in the book, he looks at the CIA's top secret program to control human behavior. He talks about what the Department of Defense knows about our food supply, but it's keeping mum and why, of course, that matters. And a whole lot more. Let's get right into it. Governor Jesse Ventura, welcome to Harrison. And what is the mainstream reaction to your tell-all tome here?
I like to refer to my books as they're calling them on the internet now. They're alternative history books.
Well, and it's really true, because if we hunker down and actually study American history from scratch, two of my ancestors signed the Declaration of Independence. We came over in 1620, and, we have documents in the family Bible, which is where you hid stuff because you knew nobody would read in there, about the drunken George Washington and brewing all the brandy to pay off people to vote for him. And this is not stuff we're taught. We're taught mythology. And what you do in your book is you bring forth really prickly and gritty facts, whether it's the origins of HIV or 9/11, the stuff that is really basic, that any culture would want to know to what degree was their government involved. And none of this stuff, or I should say all of this stuff, is conspicuously missing from the average guy's history books.
Yeah, totally. And it's been that way. It's to the point now where when I read the normal history books, I question, is this true or is this fabricated?
And so we don't really know, but you've done a lot of research on this, and I guess a lot of people, their first easy question would be, since, remember, this is a foreign object. Everything they're hearing and learning through here, they've never heard before, so they come from the place of, well, it just simply can't be true. But maybe you could share with us how you came along to many of these facts.
Well, Dick and I got to give him credit. Dick Russell is the real researcher. That's why I write with him. That's his strong point. He loves to do it, and I don't. And so we make a good team. He researches and finds the documents, and then, of course, turns them over to me. I read them and comment and write about them. And it works out pretty good that way. And we chose to do this book, Following American Conspiracies, because we took so much grief from American conspiracies being called names like conspiracy theorists and all lumped in and this and that, when all we did was that book was write about conspiracies, and we simply took the conspiracy side and offered as much evidence as we could to support it. And in many cases, the conspiracy evidence is much better than the government's evidence in reality. Well, this book, we decided, let's do a book that they can't accuse us of anything for. Let's find actual government documents and print them and comment about them. And we actually started this project about 3 or 4 months before WikiLeaks happened. And of course, when WikiLeaks happened, we were ecstatic because it was giving us access to even more documents then.
Harrison with you. You're listening to Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. Of course, streaming live all over via Facebook, via Twitter, on Ustream as video. And we're talking to Governor Jesse Ventura, who forever has been on the side of the humans. Now, this sounds rather extraordinary because we imagine that all politicians are actually fighting for us. And quite clearly, you can hear my bias. I happen to appreciate anybody who's willing to stand up and bear discomfort on behalf of the people he's actually representing. This is the basic tenets. This is, going back to Runnymede, with King James. This is the basic stuff, where a man's home is his castle and it has a right to be protected. And what the governor has done here is put together a book and listed so many of these really large issue items that have never been before presented publicly, certainly not in a commercial atmosphere. And let's take a look at one of them. 9/11 Truth is a huge movement in the United States, but if you watched CNN, as I did with you, and the only time I think Pierce Morgan what's his name? Is that his name? Yeah. The only time he's ever grown a set of nuts was when you were on there as a guest, and he suddenly was defending the establishment thinking against what you were bringing forth, as if he was actually threatened on CNN.
Well, I watched him twice to get us his style, and he caught me off guard, and I'll state this because it was the first interview I'd done in probably 5 months. I'd been down in Mexico, and we pre-taped it a week earlier, and I was off my game a little, and he sideswiped me and got me a little because I didn't realize he would attack me like he did. Had I interviewed with him about 3 days later, he would have found me much more difficult.
Well, it's interesting because I was watching him the other night, and he had his tongue so far up the proboscis of Janet Jackson or anybody else, that it seemed like a major love affair. But in this situation, quite clearly there was threat. And I guess that's really the take-home message, that your book does contain a reasonable amount of threat. Let's take the example of the American food supply and the FDA. This is something ubiquitously of interest to all Americans, which is what you eat ends up in your body, and it can trigger diseases or things of this nature. But we imagine that our magical Pop-Tarts, which they're now going to be putting RFID chips in so that the government can monitor the healthful intake of your food supply. Even your computer will read the RFID chip inside of the food, which then tells you how to cook it and what it does for you. Well, what a great way, what an Orwellian orgasm to follow you around 24/7 while you think all you're doing is eating a cornflake.
I can't say it any better than you are. I'm listening.
Well, what you need to understand, and again, this is an unsolicited compliment and absolutely an encomium, but you've given the rest of the people permission to open their minds, have scrutiny, and ask questions. And if that isn't just basic democracy, nothing is. Tommy Jefferson is doing backflips in his grave. Ben Franklin is pulling the lint out of the belly button from the whorehouse he ran in Philadelphia right now. All the founding daddies are having a great bacchanalia in celebration, and if I couldn't kiss your butt anymore, I mean, I would, but it's a phone line.
Well, I appreciate that. I truthfully love my country, and I'm on my website now. I'm selling what I hope will be my most famous quote, and it's, "I love my country, but not my government."
Harrison here with you. You're listening to and watching Harrison on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California. We're talking to Jesse Ventura, former independent governor of Minnesota, also a former U.S. Navy SEAL, a professional wrestler, a movie actor, a visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and the New York Times best-selling author of 5 different books. Currently the host and executive producer of True TV's Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, and of course he maintains a full-on reputation as the ultimate nonpartisan truth seeker and has no qualms about questioning authority.
And that's the message I want to get out to people, is that if we're not vigilant in the use of our government and what goes on in it and control it, well, then the government is going to eat us up, which it's already doing. And the country that I grew up in is changing ever so drastically in front of my eyes to something I had no idea that it could ever evolve to.
Let's take an example, Jesse Ventura, of one of the big ticket items in your book that you're most proud of, something that you've revealed that maybe you've gotten the most blowback for.
Well, I think one of it, if you combine the book along with the television show, without a doubt, it's document 24 and 25, emergency detention camps and civilian inmate labor program.
Yeah, in which we have photographic evidence of this too. A variety of
it's in a bill.
Yeah.
And that FEMA is going to create 6 detention camps throughout the country. And my question was simply, for whom? What will qualify you to get in there?
Well, I guess whatever the declared naughtiness of the day is. Right now, you've been governor of a major state. I mean, Minnesota is critical when it comes to election time. It's critical in virtually every way. It's a very important and significant state. You've been involved in government at the highest levels. You know, governor is one short of virtually anything else at the highest levels.
Well, put it this way, it's third on the salute list to the military. It goes president, vice president, head of state. So I get 6 bells and 6 side boys in the Navy, and it puts you third on the salute list.
And as you being a former Navy SEAL, as you being a former governor, having seen it, what do you imagine, having had access to FEMA in ways that the citizen never has, what do you imagine these FEMA camps would be for?
Well, you know, that's the terrifying thing about it. They claim they're going to use them in case of national disasters to put people, but why do you need locks on the doors then? If it's a place for people to survive disaster areas, shouldn't it be fairly open so relatives can move in and out and maybe remove their relatives and take them home for a while until the situation gets better or what have you? You can understand to a certain extent we could use, but how do they know where to place these places, and are they putting them in the right place, or do they know what disasters are going to happen beforehand? I'm not sure.
Precognition, as it were, or actually create the disaster so therefore you can treat it.
Well, remember, there's a new business out there now called disaster capitalism.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
Creating a disaster and then getting paid to clean it up. I believe that's what took place down in the Gulf.
Well, there's no question. Halliburton pulled in close to $1 billion off of that. We have all kinds of evidence. I was down there myself on multiple occasions interviewing fishermen who reported conspicuously that or they hate being called British Petroleum, that BP was down there, and you could see them in tents with big coolers and hard hats and air conditioning, and they would take a fisherman from Louisiana and have him drive in his boat all day to Mississippi in order to pull the oil out. By the time he arrived, it was too dark to do any work. So they would have all the fishermen go to opposite states where they didn't know the territory, they didn't know the water, they didn't know the reef, to do the work. The work never got done, and that way, but you could say they were all hard at work. It was all make-believe. And I think really that's kind of the subplot in your whole book, is that the man behind the curtain really is behind the curtain, and the plot of his play seems to be different from the plot of the public play.
Well, and it's a case of government being hypocrisy. They talk one thing, they tell us all these things, but when you look at the documentation of what's going on, it's the opposite.
Harrison,
I mean, one thing that troubles me, I'm going to be 60 this summer, and over half of my life, over 30 years, we've been at war. And this doesn't include World War II. It's wars in third world countries that I have yet to figure out what we've accomplished. And I go back to Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, who told us that all the wars after World War II would be fought in third world countries, with the government, with the military not being given an objective of which they could achieve it and declare victory. Like right now, let's look immediately at 9/11 for a moment. Was that not the reason we went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, was 9/11? That's what they told us. Well, now that they've told us they got the main perpetrator, can't we declare victory and immediately come home?
You know, it's a very good question. And as we look at the American embassy in Baghdad, Governor Ventura, we see now the largest embassy in the history of all humankind. 1.5 square miles housing 4 oil corporations. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but an international embassy has to be neutral territory. It has to be a safe haven. When that particular largest embassy in the world houses 4 oil corporations, what's the message you're really sending the people of Earth? And believe me, in Europe, if you read Der Spiegel, if you read Le Monde out of France, even the Daily Gleaner out of Jamaica, they write about this at length. They all know what's going on. Somehow here, we haven't got a clue. We still think that it's the invisible, Emmanuel Goldsteins from 1984, the terrorists under every bed.
And again, the other thing it says to you is this. They told us we were going to war over 9/11. Well, clearly that wasn't the reason, because we've now accomplished 9/11. So we didn't go to war over 9/11. We clearly went to war for another reason, because we still aren't going to come home. That's what it says to me as a veteran.
Yeah, there's clearly no movement. We could have closed Guantanamo. We could have done all the things that were promised, but quite clearly as Eisenhower, a great Republican, so smartly put it, the military-industrial complex, is going to grow hair and legs, arms and teeth, such as we've never seen before.
And again, call me a pacifist, call me a peacenik if you want, but
peacenik.
I'm sick and tired of these wars, and I'm sick and tired of us paying for them on the credit card. People bitch about national health care. If we wouldn't have gone to these 2 wars, we'd have more than enough money so that everyone could go to the doctor if they needed to.
Harrison with you. We're talking to Governor Jesse Ventura. His new book is called 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read. It is not only a written analysis of American history that hasn't been taught. Really, you might consider it radical history in the retelling, but it also is photographic evidence with scans of the actual Senate bills, the funding of certain programs. So it's proof positive as opposed to just a survey of what somebody imagines. It's really an extraordinary book, maybe a great companion to the sorts of works that Howard Zinn has done over the years from the perspective of the vanquished rather than the conqueror. There's always a second side to the story. It often could be the larger side to the story, and you and I have been, the man who owns the printing press writes the history book, right?
Oh yeah, and look what we get now. Our mainstream media, I guess I should thank them because they keep me in business and they keep me very much employed. Because what stories do we get from them? We get Anna Nicole Smith, we get Charlie Sheen, and we get all this hoopla entertainment news. And that's what dominates the minds of America. But then I look at it and I understand why, when I love to go to this issue also, is that everybody in the United States that's drinking water that has fluoride in it, well, people need to understand that fluoride, I believe, is 90% of the ingredients in Prozac.
Part of it, and sodium fluoroacetate, now that you mention it, of course, is a common form of rat poison. And just a quick backstory, because this is so interesting, and your book, once again, invites people to go and check stuff out themselves and support this incredible piece of work. Back during World War II, when they were doing the Manhattan Project, Fat Man and Little Boy, they found that they were having troubles finding the right trigger to get the atoms to react in such a way that it would create the nuclear explosion. And they started using sodium fluoroacetate, which is the side effect of aluminum production, much as we coat our houses with or make beer cans out of. And the stuff was so volatile that it was erupting in New Jersey, where they were doing experiments, blowing down in the wind and scalding the hair off of cattle. So what the government did, or the War Department at the time, is they declared that the same stuff is good for the tooth. When applied to a human tooth, this kind of fluoride is really good, so they started dumping it into the municipal water supplies. And as of today, the government still offers block grants of about $100,000, and they pay cities to dump this Class A toxin.
And you know where they learned it from, don't you?
I believe
who was first to do it?
I believe it was the Germans, wasn't it?
Yes, correct. I believe they were called Nazis. They were the first to do fluoride in the water. Now, my simple belief is this. They've told us about that we need fluoride in the water. Why do we need the government telling us how to brush our teeth and use mouthwash?
Yeah, and also one of the lessons that you show us in your book, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Know. Do you like the way I keep selling it?
Oh, yeah, you do a good job.
One of the things that you teach us in How Do We Learn How to Think, which is my favorite part of the whole thing, is when originally it was put in the water, when the government said we're putting it in the water for children's teeth, it wasn't for white children's teeth. It was for poor black children in the South who didn't have access to toothbrushes and toothpaste. Now, I don't see a huge long track record in the 1950s of the government really caring about the teeth of little black children. This, again, is where you find what could possibly be real and what's obviously BS.
Yeah, very good. You know, it is hard to make that decision in the 50s that they would be so concerned over young black children. Well, why didn't they then just put it in one of the drinking fountains?
You mean the separate drinking fountains?
Yeah, like, because you had fountains for black people and fountains for white people. Why would they not just put the fluoride in the black people's fountain?
Oh, they did, but it probably was a little different.
Oh.
At least
I don't know about it, so I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly the best plumbing available at the time. The new and shinier ones went to a new and shinier group, I think. Let's talk for a second, Governor Ventura, about your TV show, Conspiracy Theory, on True TV. This is an avalanche of ice water in the middle of a parched desert. You found a way to show us the most hideous crap that mankind can perform, and you deliver it in an entertaining fashion so that the average person can actually take the information and not just throw up all the time.
Thank you. I'm very proud of the show. I'm proud that the show actually made it on TV. When I initially came up with the idea and we came up with the concept and we thought we'd show these controversial conspiracies, and we ran up against the resistance that the government has given us in all directions. I told my crew at one point, cast and crew, I said, we're going to do these, but they're never going to air. In the 11th hour, something's going to happen, and it's not going to get on the air. And I'm pleasantly wrong, and I admit that. All 15 made it on TV. We've only had one of them, and that was the police state one that has since been banned, I guess. They've never given me an explanation as to why that one was pulled. No one's ever communicated to me what the problem was with that show. And that, of course, is the one with the FEMA camps. They're building around the country. They tell me now that we've been re-upped for another season. My son is back working, but they haven't had any contact with me, and my contract is up. And so I don't know if they plan on going ahead without me. And, of course, what also plays into this year is the fact of my lawsuit against the TSA and Homeland Security because I can't fly anywhere anymore, which is going to restrict my ability to do the show in the manner that we've done it in the past.
Give us the quick
I really don't know where it's at right now.
Give us the quick backstory on that, because not everyone is familiar. Like, well, wait a minute. You're the former governor of a major state. You're a former Navy SEAL. You have operated and cooperated at the highest, most confidential levels. What? You can't fly?
Well, I can fly, but I'm disabled now. I have metal in my body, and because of the amount of metal in my body, like last summer, when they still had the metal detector and the wand, I would go through the metal detector and it would go off if I went through naked because the metal's inside me. So I was always subjected to the wand. Well,
now, nakedness and wands really draws quite a picture.
Well, I didn't mind it so much, but it started to grate on me as the summer went on because every time I'd fly, I'd get angrier because I started to realize I was getting comfortable being searched. And I believe in a free society, you should never be comfortable being searched. If you live in a free society, it's very serious to me. And so then, of course, when fall came one time, they went to this enhanced stuff. And, of course, I went through the metal detector. It went off, and I was given the option to either be X-rayed or this extended hand personal search. I will not be X-rayed. They haven't proven to me it's safe. There's much
Harrison with you,
over it. You're not
and that was Governor Jesse Ventura by popular request. All of this will be online, the end of the interview. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Don't forget you can visit us anytime at goharrison.com. Thank you to the almost 1,000 people watching the video and the hundreds of thousands more listening on the radio. We love you, and we'll see you next Monday, 2 to 3 Pacific, 5 to 6 Eastern. Ta-tas.
I'm used
kiss